Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, I'm so very happy to have been invited and to be able to address myself to you. And at the same time, I warn you, I am not a specialist in the topics that you have been discussing here. I am more a consumer of all your products and of all your ideas. However, I do not forget that I am a revolutionary, and I have been waiting for revolutionary changes. Maybe whatever I'm going to say maybe not be interesting to you, but these are the things that matter to me. So you have given me the floor, so listen to what I have to say. We have been developing throughout history with fluidity like society, but there have also been leaps in our development. It happens so that during the lifetime of our generation, and we can see it perfectly clear in Europe, on the example of Europe, we have accomplished a great leap forward. We have removed divisions, the divisions into antagonistic blocks, border separating countries. We have eliminated the era of fights and wars, the era of borders, and we have entered the era of intellect, information, and globalization. What was or served operational in the past, I mean structures and institutions, was more or less effective, but it fitted the old era of that thought in terms of a separate country, of a separate state. In my view, today, this generation, a wonderful generation that succeeded in eliminating a lot of divisions, the ones hampering the development, this generation should be tempted to put the order in the structures and platforms to make them sustainable in today's world and today's challenges. You know me. You must have noticed also that I was very good at destroying and demolishing the old order. I have even received quite a lot of awards for that decomposition and destruction. On the other hand, I would like to make contributions as a constructor of the new past. So apart from the things you have been discussing, which are absolutely essential, bear in mind what I would like to draw your attention to. I would like to remain the last revolutionary in the history of mankind. And I'm hopeful that if we get a consensus, if we find answers to three basic open questions, I will remain the last revolutionary. I have a lot of doubts whether masses of people, society in their masses, whether they will not be tempted to start up revolutions. Last year and this year too, you have noticed that here and there, in different places, there have been stronger and stronger protests. There are people protesting in Africa, but there has been a protest related to the financial system in the United States. I have participated in those protests. I have been invited as a known revolutionary, in some directly, in some indirectly. And I was really taking a very close look at what was happening, what was developing, where the things were heading towards, and where the threats were, and where the opportunities were. So my observation is that all those protests that have taken place so far, this is only a beginning of them, more protests will follow. All those protests were against the capitalist system. I was terrified at first when I realized that, because there is no third way. As you know, communism is unquestionably over. And here we have the protests against the second system, that is the capitalism. Of course, we have to speak of different capitalist systems in Egypt or in the United States, but all the protests in their essence were against this system. So at first, as I was saying, I was terrified. But when I took a closer look at what was happening, what the people's claims were, I realized that actually no one among the protesters questions the principle of the market economy. And then no one seriously questioned private ownership. So, truly speaking, the pillars of the capitalist system could be saved. Nobody opposes them. There are protests and claims elsewhere. One of the issues that I realized was on the table was the protesters were saying, we don't care, but but we need to have jobs. We are well educated, so we need to get jobs and have jobs provided. Those who own businesses claim that they can't afford providing employment to everyone. The protesters say in turn, we can't afford being unemployed. In the protests, we have also realized that those demanding claimed that business people should be responsible for providing jobs to the people, not governments, not administrations, not ministers, but those who know best about providing jobs, that is those who own businesses, factories, manufacturing plants, etc. Another great remark is that we don't want to have bigger businesses, but more of those. We also managed to realize that in order to sustain the capitalist system in this century, we need to triple the capital owners. They, together with their families, can defend against demagoguery and populism, and therefore keep it in place in this century. It is not true that there is not enough work for the jobs to be provided. I have also been told that there is no work, but I realize that there is no work when we keep thinking in terms of the old era, when we had countries and thought in terms of separate countries. That was when we tried to compete against other countries, wondering who was going to get ahead faster, not caring about the neighbors and about other countries. All that mattered was our own interest, the interest of our state, of our country. Someone called that era the era of rat's race. In that race, we never paid enough attention to those who were weaker in the system. Now, when we can so clearly see in Europe, when we no longer compete so strongly, when we don't want to fight anymore, we should really transfer all the structures and institutions to focus on those who are mediocre at racing and those who lagged behind. We have to provide jobs to them, and the kind of jobs that would work to advantage of us all. Those protesters also convinced me that we can see around how much potential work opportunities there are. For example, look at the cities here or elsewhere. Almost all of them are unbearable and inhumane. They have intersections with traffic lights every 10 meters. These cities were built for a different kind of civilization. Today, instead, we speed up computers and we come late for work. So I think we should at least demolish all the cities, or if not, to rebuild them. Italian architects are building or proposing the Chinese construction of 100 cities which are traffic-free and environmental friendly. I have seen their designs in films. those cities cost 1/3 for their operation as the cities that we have today in place. There, even if all the citizens decided to drive in their cars at the same time, there wouldn't be a congestion at all. Everywhere there are collision-free intersections, flyovers, tunnels, etc. Of course, I guess you could get, as the city jumped, if suddenly all the citizens decided to go to attend a certain sports event, but then there were just a lane or two would be perhaps blocked up. Otherwise, the traffic could flow freely. So if we say that we can't afford unemployment, bear in mind in your economic decisions that the protests in the street can really destroy things. Do not forget that in the early 20th century, we questioned the role that God used to have. We no longer fear God, we no longer fear our neighbors. So what do the masses do then? They seek justice, they seek equal chances. So unless we find sensible solutions, we will have great problems. So the first open-ended question is the economy. So I suggest certain improvements to the capitalist system, listening to those protesting, to prepare the economic system that would allow us well-being and peace. The second question that requires an answer is the shape of today's democracy. So far, the old democracy functioned well within our countries and provided us, first of all, with rights. But today, we can see what this democracy looks like. Nobody really takes it seriously. Nobody takes politicians seriously, whereas they do whatever they wish. And therefore, I think we need to improve democracy by adding responsibilities to the rights on different levels of our social organization, different responsibilities. We can say that, of course, you have the right not to take part in the election. You have the right not to be a political party member. It's your business. But we must all remember that in the 21st century, we cannot play chess and football and boxing on one pitch. There is only one game that can be played on the pitch. You can't elect your representatives one day and then throw them off the office with rocks. This would be really a disgrace for today's educational system. We could have adopted these measures when we had no freedom of election. Today, we have to reform our schools to educate children so that they know that this is the way of solving their problems. There is this third question remaining that still requires an answer, is what should serve as the actual foundations for this for our European integration and tomorrow's globalization. We cannot establish anything solid when respective member states have so different foundations, differing from one another. When I raise this question on various continents, almost half of the public answers, those of the left-wing orientation, say that there is no need to invent anything new. It's enough to base our future on the foundations of freedoms. That is, all the individuals throughout the world are more or less equally free. All those free individuals have the right to associate themselves which way they want. And on top of it, we will have the free market economy and legal regulations, making sure that the law is being enforced. Of course, this is briefly speaking. There is the remaining half of the public, well, equal half, because there are always, the halves are always equal. They claim that nothing solid can be built on such foundations. Demagoguery, populism, and cheating will sooner or later lead you to a shore, to crash. So this generation that won such a wonderful victory should really now try harder to build the future of this world on the foundations of the same shared values. When I say values, I don't mean religious values. I mean a kind of a lay decalogue that everybody would agree to. If we reached a consensus among religions with non-religious people, and if we manage to identify such a decalogue, that if everyone followed this decalogue by educating youngsters, following it, students, the court systems, promotions at workplace, punishment, always based on these 10 commandments, then in the longer term would be able to educate an individual of lay conscience, giving awards for the good and really punishing hard for the evil. Then we could really stand the chance of putting our legacy not to the continental macro scale, but a global one as well. I am deeply confident that we are able, once noticing the challenges, when debating the things, we are able to identify the issues that will serve as proper roots for our systems and for our platforms. And this is the purpose that we need to follow in the 21st century. We developed our civilization so far in a positive way, but also in the dangerous way that this civilization, this technology can no longer be confined within the small countries and states. So the question that remains is which issues, which aspects of our life can no longer be treated from a perspective of a country. We don't want to be integrity in everything, but there are we want to be different in some aspects, but in others we just need to enlarge the structures in which we organize ourselves. Some will globalize themselves without our interference, but we need to assist the others to be approached globally, because if we fail to do that, our civilization will be endangered. I'm very happy that together with you, we have won altogether the elimination of all divisions, bad divisions that were operational until not so long ago. But I will be even happier if we succeed in starting the construction of the new era after a very thorough, wide debate, because in every case we first have the word that then becomes the flesh. Well, I often hear from people that this is just daydreaming, that is impossible. People will not be able to integrate Europe, and not to mention globalization. I have this advantage of having heard a similar thing some years ago when I heard that we stood no chance of bringing communism down within the lifetime of our generation, because in Poland alone we had 200,000 Soviet troops controlling the territory, plus about 1 million Soviet troops in the surrounding countries and silos with nuclear weapons around. So whenever we asked the question whether we stood any chance of changing the status quo, the response was pretty clear. Only the nuclear war could change it. That's what we heard. And what did we see? After all, there was a way out. Maybe it is high time today for us to look back where our miscalculation of the situation was. Why was it possible to overcome the situation nevertheless? This might be useful for us when we construct this difficult, challenging future. And can you remember how it all came about? Nobody really believed that it was possible. No politician believed that, and I spoke to many of them personally, that it was possible. And what was enough? Paul became the Pope, and he started up the values, and he awoke us. His intention was not to fight against communism, but all he did was he let us count it, how many we were. And the troops, the tanks, proved to be too weak to continue our oppression. And the same applies today when following that example of that victory from the past. Let us just debate over the values, and once we agree on those, the challenges that we face will turn out to be really insignificant. And in your effort to find the answers, in your efforts to debate things, you're bound to come across like Wałsa until they close a coffin over my head. Thank you very much for your attention.